A little earlier in the show, we talked about it being 20 years on since the GST was introduced. And today I saw this comment from former Deputy Prime Minister John Anderson. If you remember, he was the leader of the Nationals and in the Howard government years. And this is all obviously the time the Howard government brought in the GST. Let's have a listen to John Anderson today.
It says something of enormous significance that we are today celebrating no less than 20 years since we had a major taxation reform in Australia. So the issue is firstly cultural, not simply one of policy. Are we capable of as a people, of pulling together in the face of the challenges, external and internal, that confront us as a nation, and of acting in our own best interests? It will, of course, as you imply, be very difficult. It was very difficult last time round. We almost lost the 1998 election, although I personally sometimes think we won it precisely because we were fighting for something we deeply believed in.
It's time now for the economics panel. Joining me tonight from Melbourne is the Herald Sun's Terry McCrann, and in Sydney, the Australian's economic editor, Adam Creighton. Goodness me, you're waking me up with that jacket there, Terry McCrann. I might have to start with you. You know what struck me? Yes, I want us to have a debate about tax reform, but what struck me today, listening to John Anderson, is where are the politicians of that sort of gravitas and guts in Australia anymore?
Well, let me just take one issue with what John Anderson said, that word celebration. I'm not too sure that too many people are celebrating the arrival of the GST. Yes, it was courageous tax reform, and in 2000 it was good tax reform, although I'm very, very sceptical in 2020 of embracing further increases in the GST or further widening of the GST. Because the one thing, I think, Peter, that we recognise and realise when we get tax reform, quote unquote, the reform might be a little debatable, but one thing is certain, we get more and more taxation.
Yeah, look, that's a good reminder because, you know, Adam will remember this. He was probably in short pants. He's a bit younger than us. But there were all these commitments from the states. They would take away various taxes before the GST was brought in. And I think only Victoria under Jeff Kennett met the commitments. Basically, everybody else kept the taxes they had anyway, plus then added in the GST. So it's a vexed reform, and I wouldn't say you celebrate it, but I do think it was at least a reform where we tried to clean up what was a very convoluted and messy system. Have we got it in us anymore, Adam, to reform the tax system? I look at Dom Perrottet, the Treasurer in New South Wales, a reform debate he wants to have. I think that's a great thing to have the debate, but are we politically sort of immune to taking on these sorts of issues?
Well, look, I think the New South Wales government is right to stress the stamp duty land tax swap. I think that broadening the base of the GST or increasing the rate would be politically very difficult. I think it's unlikely to happen. Of course, every state has to agree and the Commonwealth has to agree, essentially. And I just can't see that happening. But the states can go it alone if they want on stamp duty and land tax. And my understanding is the Victorian and the New South Wales government are very keen on the idea, and they've been working on this behind the scenes. And of course, they're effectively, more than half the economy if they do that. So I think that is the low-hanging fruit, if you like. I'm personally very opposed to lifting the rate of the GST because I think once you lift it once, we see from overseas that governments will lift it more and more times. And also the GST is quite a hidden, sneaky tax. It is very efficient in theory, but because it's wrapped up in the price of goods and services, you don't really think about it when you pay it. Whereas what I like about land tax is that when you pay land tax, you really know you're paying it. And so therefore it's harder for governments to lift land tax in the long run.
I can tell you I noticed the GST. I absolutely noticed the GST.